This past week I had the opportunity to rewatch a movie that I hadn't seen for a little while. The movie was called Valkyrie, and for those of you that don't know or don't remember, it's a movie about a guy that was in Germany whose name was Klaus von Stauffenberg. He was one of the primary plotters in the attempt to remove Hitler from power during World War II. There's a scene in the movie, it was kind of an odd movie to watch anyway, because I already know how it's going to end, and once you've seen it once, you think that probably be enough, but it's just a very intriguing movie. If you haven't seen it, it's quite interesting to watch. There's a scene in the movie where he's involved in treason. He knows that he's kind of crossing this line, that if he makes the choice he's going to make to continue on his path, that he'll either be successful and they'll overthrow the government, or they won't, and he'll be killed, and he knows that. So he's sending his wife and family, he's got 4 kids at the time, his wife was pregnant, he's sending them away because he knows that if this doesn't work, or possibly if it does, they're all going to be killed. Yet he still has the confidence and the belief and the trust in what he's doing, and the passion in his heart to make the sacrifice to continue on. And it's a real touching scene because his wife has to get out of the car and come back to him, and they race one last time, and then he sends them off. This is a true story. It truly happened. Here's a guy that makes this sacrifice and does this. And ultimately he does. It ends up failing, as we know, and he ends up dying for what he believed in. He was willing to sacrifice everything, his life, potentially his family's life as well for that. We see that same sacrifice just here last week. The young man in our community made a sacrifice. He joined the military knowing that there was potential danger, and he did it anyway for what we would assume is because he believed enough in our country and the mission that he was going for to do that, and he knew that there was potential cost, and his family knew that as well. And again, we see the sacrifice. Our ultimate sacrifice that we can see is through Jesus. Obviously, he laid down his life for each and every one of us. The key with the sacrifice is it's something we do that we have an option. We don't have to do that. Jesus didn't have to go to the cross. He could have just brought the angels down and said it's finished and declared his kingdom right then and there. The young man in our community, Kenneth Worthing, he did not have to join the military. He chose to, knowing that that's what he wanted to do. And the same thing with Stauffenberg. At that moment, he could have said, you know, I could be involved in this, or I could just decide not to do this and spare my family, spare my life, and just go through and wait and see what happens, and we'll work it out at the end. But they made a choice, and they laid down their lives, and they laid down that idea because they chose to. Same with Jesus, he chose that. Though those others chose things of this world, they chose because of ideas and philosophies maybe that they believed in. Jesus chose to lay his life down for each and every one of us. Knowing that many of us, or many of the people around him, would reject him and hate him, he still laid his life down for them. As we prepare our hearts today for communion, I want you to remember the sacrifice that everybody makes, but especially that Jesus made. He set the example. We are supposed to sacrifice for others. That's sometimes doing things, it's sometimes loving people we don't want to love, or caring for people that we don't particularly want to do that for. Yet he set that example and loved every single one of us, regardless of how we felt about him. So let's remember that as we take this communion.